Okay, this will be a full-length video, unlike the rush production that went through last week when I had so many things going on that I just wanted to make an announcement to let everybody know that the channel hadn't disappeared and I haven't died or anything like that. Hopefully, I mean, depending on what may go wrong trying to film all of this. But this is December 12th, 2024, freezing cold weather outside with a lot of nasty winds, and yeah, I'm already getting tired of it. Just I feel I was made for the warmer weather, you know. But one thing that there was a couple of different things I've been exploring for topics in these videos, but one thing that I discovered, if you really want to get pissed off and irritated, is just go over to some of the Reddit threads that talk about cults and some of the Reddit threads that talk about religion, and you will see people doing all kinds of stretching and mental gymnastics to try to justify why a religion can't be a cult, including people saying things like, well, see, I'm an atheist and my higher power is myself. So you made a decision to turn your will and your life over to yourself as you understood yourself, came to believe that yourself could restore you to sanity, admitted to yourself and to another human being. You see the ludicrousness of this proposition. It's like people take the 12 steps and put any other absurd, outrageous, silly definition into it and see how it doesn't work. AA is a very clearly defined religion that lays out very clearly what you have to believe in, what you have to pray for, how you have to pray. And if they force you to pray, it's a good chance it's a religion. It doesn't say in the how it works at the beginning of every meeting, there is only one who has all power. That one is yourself, or whatever you choose it to be. That one is whatever you name it to be, including the flying spaghetti monster in the distant galaxy somewhere that you feel is paying attention to you. May you find that thing now, because that's whatever you want it to be. It's very precise in its definitions, but I saw a lot of people going through all kinds of mental gymnastics to try to claim how AA can't possibly be a religion because their higher power is themselves, or even worse, these definitions that I've heard people do when they say something like, well, see, the universe is alive, which you don't have evidence for that, by the way. The universe is alive, and it wants to experience life through us, and therefore we are the universe, and therefore since we are the universe and we're conscious, living, breathing creatures, we are the universe experiencing existence. So therefore we are God, and the universe is God, and all that other kind of thing, which, by the way, doesn't fit into the AA program model where you're punished for experiencing life. If the universe is experiencing life through me, then any action I take is the universe just experiencing it, right? The universe doesn't punish me for picking up a bottle, and the universe doesn't have some collective consciousness in the Horsehead Nebula in the galaxies light years away that comes to me and says, well, since you left out something on your fourth step, I'm going to curse you to drunken death. And to my knowledge, the universe and the star systems don't let people die so that it can continue living. I mean, if you want to create this bizarre definition of some higher power spirit of the universe that's absolutely useless to practical real-world application, other than being something that you thought up after you got high off of some really good stuff, and decided that the black holes in the galaxy somewhere have spawned you into existence past numerous star systems so that you can experience sensations, okay, I guess, but that does not apply to the cult religion of AA. I doubt very seriously that Bill W. could have even grasped such an idea at the time that he wrote this shit. Shit that he ripped off from the Oxford group who thought Hitler was sent by God. Never can stress that enough. You're following a program that was ripped off from another program that was a religious cult that wanted a worldwide dictatorship of men under God control, and said Adolf Hitler was a gift from this spirit of the universe, whatever it is. But it reminds me of something I saw on an atheist call-in show. There's a program called The Line. It's not for everybody, but it's a call-in show where people call in and try to defend what they believe and why. And it doesn't necessarily always work out too well in their favor. But there were two hosts about a week or two ago that were ex-Jehovah's Witnesses. And believe it or not, I have a subscriber and a friend on Facebook that I did not realize how cult-like the Jehovah's Witness religion was. I mean, I literally thought it was a couple of people that went around knocking on your doors, and occasionally saying, "Do you have a moment to talk to us about this religion?" But apparently, uh, by a couple of channels I've looked at, by the YouTube channel that my subscriber has out there, the Jehovah's Witnesses engages in all kinds of rather diabolical activity. And if you leave the Jehovah's Witnesses, you are an apostate and dead to them and everything else. But these two guys were talking at the beginning of the call-in show, and they were doing the introductions. And one of them said he was talking about the BITE model, which I'm going to do a video about, which is developed by an expert named Stephen Hassan, which stands for, I forgot all of it, but I know it has to do with emotions, and I know it has to do with information, and a few of those other things. But he said he was discussing his experiences with a cult member one time online, not a Jehovah's Witnesses cult member, but a member of a cult. And he was talking about what he went through as a child growing up, and he was talking about what he experienced in the Jehovah's Witness community. You can't get a blood transfusion. Your children are denied blood transfusions, and a couple of other really bizarre elements of Jehovah's Witnesses. But he said the person he was talking to cut him off and said, "Well, unlike you, I was in a real cult. I wasn't in something mainstream like Jehovah's Witnesses." And it's important to remember that, yes, even though Jehovah's Witnesses is not on some compound out in the middle of Wyoming somewhere, or in the middle of some Midwestern state hiding in the mountains with a stockpile of weapons and Bible tracts and other things protecting themselves from the end of times, whatever kind of prophecy, that doesn't necessarily exclude organizations from being cults, including the AA religion. The AA religion, though, happens to be in a unique position because it has the support of the United States government and the multi-billion-dollar-a-year treatment industry racket protecting it. It's really, a lot of people don't really know, and I didn't know either, how much AA is tied up into the treatment center industry, and that's partly due to Marty Mann. AA was a Diane organization at the time. She wormed her way in there with all the government officials, and they realized they could make a big profit off of all of this. So cults are not exclusionary to something like that. And, some of the people on the Reddit forum where I was reading all this bullshit about, well, my higher power can be myself, as I, or whatever, or it's the universe. The universe is alive, and I'm a spiritual being having a human experience. Well, we don't have no good evidence that you are a spiritual being having a human experience. If you experience a brain injury or something happens to you due to a stroke, or even if you had a lobotomy, the real so-called you that's hiding somewhere deep down inside of you, that's your essence, your mojo, or whatever the fuck that's supposed to be, it doesn't seem to manifest in situations like that. But you've heard it all at multiple meetings over and over again, how it works, that you came to believe that a power greater than yourself could restore you to sanity. The only problem is you don't have to come to believe in yourself. And you generally, I have noticed when it's not outside of metaphysical quackery, how many things in life do you actually accept without any evidence whatsoever? Like, there's very few things that I think that I'd be willing to, sorry, sinuses. I'm all for being able to ponder possibilities, or perhaps, having those thoughts in the middle of the night when you're having a little bout of insomnia and you step out on your front porch because you can't sleep and you look up at the stars and you have this funny feeling due to sleep deprivation of what might be out there, what could be beyond all this, and those kinds of things. But to create an entire system that punishes you for not following it, or an entire system that dooms you to failure and death and suicide, jails and institutions based on those kinds of thoughts is pretty much absurd. But at the same time, that's not what AA is. AA is not a soapbox oftentimes for people to get up there in the meetings and say, what if the universe is conscious in the Horsehead Nebula galaxies, and it's beaming the information to us across time and space to make us aware of what it is, and all this other useless proposition. That's not what AA meetings are even about. Most of the time in AA meetings, it's a format for a lot of gurus and old timers to chastise all the new members for not getting the program the way that they're supposed to get the program as it was outlined in the big book and following it blindly and, whatever. You'll see a few of those people that occasionally get called on that'll do that whole entire spiel of, if I see this coffee cup and the coffee cup sees me, then couldn't the coffee cup be God kind of people? The kind of people that maybe took a little too much LSD, but those kinds of people get cut off really quickly. They're not encouraged from talking. But you hear it at every meeting. Came to believe that a power greater than yourself could restore us to sanity. Then they switch immediately over to God. Gotta try doing that, by the way, with anything else. Like, made a decision to turn my will over to the Horsehead Nebula in the sky somewhere that it's experiencing reality as I understand it. Doesn't really quite work, does it? And I'd like to add that for those that do those mental gymnastics, you're actually deviating from the program itself. If you have a drink again, you'll get called out on this. I've seen it happen to people. I've seen it happen during my time in AA. Somebody would come along and they would have some ill-conceived notion of some invisible entity that works in our lives and guides us through, or whatever it is, the great wind, the great teachers, whatever New Age saying they could rip off of the latest bumper sticker or a coffee cup or something like that. And if they ended up drinking again, I guarantee you some old timer was going to tell them, where did all that stuff get you? That was just self-knowledge. That was just your pride and your ego trying to intellectualize your way out of this thing. You got to accept the big book as it was written. You got to accept God the way Bill W. tells you to do it. Or I've even had people come at me with, well, maybe love is God or something like that. Except there's a real problem with this shit. There's a reason that words have definitions. There's a reason that words have meaning and implied meaning, so we can actually communicate. If we're going to change everything over to where love is actually God and God is actually humanity and humanity is a spiritual principle to this, then what's the fucking purpose of language at all at this point? Because any word that we define will be whatever we want it to mean at any time that you want it to mean. And that's another problem with the AA cult religion. It redefines words, it redefines definitions, and it redefines basic fucking common sense, if you ask me. And it says in the AA 12 and 12, I had a little note here that I was reading off of, it says that for every atheist and agnostic who was using the group as its higher power, and who was saying that they couldn't they couldn't accept the spiritual angle of things, so they would use spiritual principles and use those kinds of things as a definition for their higher power, those people would eventually love God and call him by name. It's funny, Bill W. doesn't say anything outside of that, just him by name. You can't have whatever religion you want in this thing. You can't believe in whatever you want in this thing. You can try to do that, but you're deviating totally from AA, and if you're going to deviate that far from AA, to the point that you're just going to have a bong hit and believe the universe is alive and well and functioning, then there's no point in being a member of AA anymore. There's no point in being a member of a hardline Calvinistic Protestant old-time type religion that punishes the people who disobey the mystical higher power in the sky that Bill W. referred to as him by name. Now, here's the funny thing that I wanted to bring up, and before I lost my train of thought too much. They'll say your higher power can be whatever you want it to be. In every single meeting, they'll say, not every single meeting, but you'll hear it said a lot by AA defenders. Let me back that up with a correction. They don't say it in every single meeting, because most meetings are hardcore, fundamentalist, fire and brimstone bullshit. Only instead of fire and brimstone, it's drunken jails, institutions of death. But they'll say when you get an AA defender on the spot, they'll say, well, now, your higher power could be whatever you want it to be. We don't have no monopoly on God. It says that in the big book, which I suspect is just a marketing strategy. Because when you're new to AA and you're kind of sitting on the outskirts of AA and everything like that, your higher power can be whatever you want it to be. But when you get sucked deep into the cult religion, all of a sudden you realize that there's a lot of things that you must do. There's a lot of things that are not suggestions. You have to get a sponsor if you want to be considered part of the in crowd. You have to do these things and all that other kind of shit. On God, we don't have no monopoly, and, your higher power can be whatever it is. That's kind of when you're a new person. That's kind of part of the deceptive recruiting angle. But once you get in deep in AA, you find out right quick, if you want to be accepted into their little circle, then you got to follow all the tenets of their horseshit cult religion. But if you notice this, if your higher power can be whatever you want to be, try going in there and saying, well, you know what? I've decided my children are my higher power. Yeah, I'm going to do this for my children. I want my children to have a father, a sober father. I want to do this for my kids. Watch what'll happen right quick. You'll find out. They'll say, oh, no, you can't do it for that reason. You got to do it for yourself. You got to do it for yourself at that point. So your higher power can't be your children, even though your children might be an ideal that you want to strive for in order to quit drinking. Or if you say, I'm doing this for my spouse or my girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever it is, they'll say, no, you can't do it like that. You got to be doing it for yourself. You can't quit for your wife. You can't quit for your children. You can't quit for your job. So you told me that my higher power could be whatever I wanted it to be. And now you're telling me that if I say, well, I want to do this for my family. I want to do this so I can be a better father. I want to do this so I can be a better husband. Or I want to do this for this reason or that reason whatsoever. They'll tell you right quick that no, it won't work if you do it for those reasons. You got to do it for yourself. Notice how they'll tell you that you have to have constant thought of others to be in the program, which is really just a code word for doing whatever the cult wants for you to do. And that you have to think about everybody else when it comes to the cult only. But if you talk about your family, if you talk about things in the real world that you might want to quit drinking for, real world goals, they'll tell you something like, well, it's a selfish program. Contradictions abound with these people. Contradictions abound. But overall, the idea that you need a power of any sort is, to me, rooted in a really, really bad and flawed way to look at life. Because, I was going to just grab something and say, let's say I make this my higher power, or let's say I have to have a higher power. That higher power is not based in any evidence. It's not based in any reality. It's not based in anything substantive. It's not based in anything tangible. And there's going to come that day in reality when something falls apart or something does hit you. Life has a way of doing that, where you experience some kind of trauma, where you experience some kind of tragedy. And that's not going to be there to do anything for you because it's not real to begin with. People have oftentimes come at me with this argument, well, if the placebo effect makes you feel better, then what's the harm in it? A lot of harm is in it. You see, during all those years that I was in AA, I never learned how to deal with cravings. I never learned strategies to cope with when I want to drink. I never learned how to cope with real emotional problems in life or my own emotional problems. I never learned how to address certain things in my life where I was severely weakened in, or parts of my life where I had things that deeply personal things that I needed to address and talk about. I was never taught any of those things. No, I was taught to turn it all over to the higher power as I understood it, which ultimately you know what that means when you're around AA long enough. And I tried to do that. I tried to do that and tried to do that and tried to do that and tried to do that. I never got any results, and when I didn't get the results, I blamed myself for not getting those results, when in truth, it was obvious all along that none of those things were even tangible or real. See, I wasn't learning how to overcome a drinking problem. I was learning how to convert to a cult religion, where the cult religion is telling you your higher power will solve all your problems. Your higher power will take away your desire to drink. And when that didn't happen, I had nothing to fall back on. I had no strategies, mechanisms, or coping, or anything else. I think the comforting lie is a dangerous lie, in my opinion, because even if you get that temporary placebo effect from going to meetings, even if you get that temporary placebo effect of believing there's something out there in the galaxy that's watching your every move, which I can't imagine why anybody would find that comforting. I don't find that comforting at all. Even if you can get relief out of a placebo effect, knowing it's a placebo effect, there's going to come that day, that moment, that hour, that something in your life will happen, because all of our lives are marred by tragedy in this very short time we get on Earth, where that's not going to work, where reality is going to hit you, where something really bad is going to hit you, and you're not going to have anything to reach out to or fall back on in terms of real-world practical applications, because you've been burying your head in the sand the whole entire time, believing God's going to take care of everything. My life didn't start to really turn around in a way when I realized that there was no Calvary coming, It wasn't going to be like the movies where the heroes swoop in at the last minute and lift you out of your misery and give you an opportunity to walk free. There was no metaphysical, subjective concept of the imagination that I could dream up that was actually going to take away my problems, that was going to take away my my issues with life itself. I realized I'm on my own. I'm alone in this vast, empty, uncaring universe, and it's going to be up to me to try to get myself out of this mess in as much as possible. Nobody actually crawls their way out of the gutter alone. I mean, I'm not going to sell that type of story you hear so many people in AA doing, well, I was homeless, I was living behind the dumpster, and then I started doing the steps, and I was a CEO with $1 million in the bank. That, too, is not realistic. And to tell people these things is very damaging because you're not giving them any real strategy to cope with what may or may not be wrong with them, what may or may not be behind their addictions. They'll say it's a symptom of a larger problem, but they never get around to telling you what the larger problem is. They just give you a bunch of prescriptions based on some bullshit religious idea that you're an inherently bad, flawed person that needs to be saved from yourself. That you need to get a concept of something in the universe so that thing in the universe can create you. In other words, I need to make up a God so the God can create me and I can worship the God and the God can save me from the alcohol. Does that not sound like kind of one of the most ludicrous things that you've ever heard of if you think about it too deeply? If you come to rely on something that's not tangible, something that can't help you, something that can't work with you, then there's nothing you can turn to when you absolutely need help with it. When I was hit with every drinking craving, or every drunken bender, or everything else that happened to me over the years, I was just told over and over again, you're just a bad person, you're not honest, you're full of fear, you're in full flight from reality. Well, yeah, you can throw all this derogatory bullshit at me all day long, but how about telling me something fucking useful? So I'm going to make the argument that no, there is nothing good to be found in these mental gymnastics of trying to create some higher power, trying to create a religion according to your own self based on these horseshit principles of a cult religion that has such a massive failure rate that if it wasn't for the multi-billion-dollar-a-year treatment industry, it would have long dried up and blown away. We're almost 3 decades into the 21st century. We know that the lightning in the sky is not coming from Thor. We know that germs exist. We know that there's not any good evidence to believe that there's an invisible realm like Bill W. thought it was. We know what electricity is. We know that there's no reason to live in the dark ages any longer and eschew technology and get back to basics by just reading the same horseshit books in these meetings, pretending that our lives are getting better when you're not doing nothing but burying your head in the sand and just saying, well, things are great here. It's funny, they say there's a long period of Reconstruction ahead in their fucking literature, but what long period of Reconstruction ahead? I never did any Reconstructing during all my time in that cult religion. I just got constant reinforcement, negative reinforcement. You're powerless, you're flawed, you're a bad person, you're a sinner, you're in full flight from reality, you can't tell the true from the false, don't think, don't have any critical thinking abilities, trust God, clean house, whatever the fuck that means. And yeah, that was it. I had to learn all kinds of things on my own, about my own self, to figure out what works for me. And I think that's probably true for everybody. So no, you don't benefit by delusion. You don't benefit by creating temporary placebo effects that make you feel kind of important and special in the universe when there's no evidence to believe that that's real. Because when real catastrophes hit, then you're kind of right back where you started, with nothing. Anyway, that was thoughts for the week on this. I had a couple of ideas jotted down for how to tackle the entire thing about how the bite model doesn't quite fit what I think is a totally correct definition from the cult, but that's for the next video next time. So, for all of those who are watching this, hopefully you've got your Christmas shopping done, or if you're like me and you're estranged from everyone, you don't have to worry about Christmas shopping, but you can Christmas shop for yourself. See you guys next week, and oh, I almost forgot, because I had it right here in the paper in front of me. Damn. I almost turned this video off before I read the subscriber comment. The subscriber comment of the week. It's a good thing I saw this, because otherwise I would have stopped recording. The best thing I did for myself, subscriber comment, was escape the brainwashing of the AA world. I feel really bad for those who are still in that bullshit trap where they're drilled with cult dogma. So many people are being misled by those damn bullshit AA meetings. Our culture is so warped as to coerce people into AA. Totally agree with that. The disease model is a lie. And it is a lie. There's no disease of alcoholism. There's no evidence for this. And their definition of a disease has something to do with some metaphysical bullshit about turning your back on God and being in covered with the defects, not rooted in any reality. The manipulation of people to get a sponsor is scary, and honestly, in retrospect, all the assholes that told people to get off medication was way out of hand. I know too many people that died as a result of AA torment and dictates. These so-called recovery houses are absolutely insane, forcing people to attend AA meetings, get sponsors, and the facade of AA is absolutely disgusting. I'm so glad I got out. So many people die under the myth of AA. They're brainwashed to think AA is the only way. And AA slowly strips people of believing in themselves and eventually corrupts them completely. Fuck these cults. Couldn't agree more. See you guys next week.